Hi, everybody. Welcome to Evolve, where we focus on the evolution of leadership.
Things have changed, yet we evolve and adapt. But what's next, and what's next for you? Evolve focuses on the intersection of leadership, technology, and workplace. Don't get left behind. Join us in this evolution. Rise and evolve with us.
And I'm Kim Ford, your host, and I have a very special guest here today. Do you mind please taking a minute to introduce yourself and your company?
Hi, Kim. My name is Bob Jordan, and I run a company called InterimExecs.
Excellent. What does InterimExecs do?
Matchmakers. It's the premier global matchmaker for organizations. They show up and they have a leadership need. Generally the C-suite, CEO, CFO, CIO, and we created a concept and a team called Red Team years ago. Red stands for Rapid Executive Deployment. And so if we think we can make a perfect match, we do, between the organization and either one executive or a team. And we do that work around the world. It's both for-profits, nonprofits, public companies, private companies.
That's awesome. So, a lot of people, let's talk a little bit about leadership and leadership styles. How do you determine, how do you identify them? What are you seeing? Have you seen a change in, post-pandemic, pre-pandemic, anything like that?
Well, I'm glad we're talking leadership style. This is something that we started fixating on years ago. Given the work that we do, over the years, we've been approached by about 7,000 executives from 50 countries. So Kim, if you have beautiful offices, if that was a line of people outside your door, that would be about 4 miles long. And so over the years, we developed ranking and scoring and screening, and we noticed these patterns. There was a pattern for the majority of executives, which was they were having leadership journeys, career experiences that were okay, but not great. And then there was the top 2, 3, 4% who were crushing it. And because we have a ringside seat for the kind of work that we do, where we're talking to the board, how's it going, or the owner of the company, how's it going, how are the executives or the executive performing? And we're talking to the executives, how's it going? And invariably it's going great. And we're like, why and how? And we spotted these 4 different leadership styles. That's what led to writing the book, Right Leader, Right Time.
Oh, that's awesome. And can you give us just an overview of what those styles are?
Yes, the styles are fixer, artist, builder, and strategist, or in the book, what we call FABS for short, FABS.
That's awesome. Tell me what a strategist is.
Strategist is the leader at scale. Strategist is the leader who excels in complex or very large organizations where it's no longer a question of, as Stephen Covey wrote, personal span of control. Fixer, artist, and builder tend to be in roles where the team size is 10, 20, 50, 200, but generally where they know each other. Yeah. There is personal relationship. You can rely on that. You can rely on trust, which has been built. The strategist, who we could have called conductor, pilot, yeah, quarterback, when you're leading, one of the phenomenal women we interviewed in the book, Janine Davidson, had been the Undersecretary of the Navy, the Department of Defense. When you have hundreds of thousands of people who are nominally within your organization, what do you do to have impact? What do you do to move an organization forward? It's a very different thing for that strategist at scale as opposed to the first 3 styles.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I would assume that a lot of strategists aren't doers, right? They're more high level implementation, see the big picture, and then other people execute.
Yes, it's a different kind of doing. And the language is radically different. For anyone out there who thinks, someone leads a company, they lead a company, they could do anything. It's totally not true. And when you hear the difference between, say, the way a fixer leader is wired and how they describe work and success versus a strategist, it's night and day. The strategist is talking about being cross-trained, about mentoring, about being mentored, about loyalty to an organization, about rising and advancing. The fixer, please. The fixer is this adrenaline junkie who needs to go into a burning building.
Yes.
And we're not trying to pigeonhole leaders to say you're only one of these. All successful leaders are
all of them.
A kind of to infinite degree mixture of fixer, artist, builder, strategist. It's the exact same way as, we all understand DNA now. Yeah. 4 nucleotides, that's it. But those 4 in infinite combination make up all of biological life. Yeah. Same with leadership. There's a mix. And what we find with highly successful leaders is there tends to be 1 or 2 dominant styles.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So what does success look like for these different styles?
It's a great question. For the first thing is that it is more measured and held to account.
Yeah.
So what happens, for example, the majority of leaders who are just doing okay, when you look at their track records and you drill in and you look at their resumes, there's not a whole lot of measurement there. It's a little bit of more going along and managing, and it does not have remarkable either in the highs or the lows. And what you tend to see with remarkable leaders is there are lows for sure, but there are remarkable highs and accomplishments that tend to be quantifiable. And so one of these traits we believe is that successful leaders seek to be held to account, not because they're always going to succeed, but because this is kind of the game of life. The challenge of life is this attitude of put me in the game, coach.
Put me in the game. I love it. Everybody wants the opportunity. It's so funny. I'm thinking through all of our different clients, and they're pretty much all CEOs. And I love that you said they're a blend of all 4, because you really are. It's just one of them is dominant, typically 1 or 2, especially 1 is, and I can really start putting different clients in those buckets. And I think the what I would call, change management, and I know that's a lot of your background too, what change looks like for a company, that change agent. That person's coming in, and you're right, they're walking into a fire, and their job is to figure out how to put out the fire, how to rehabilitate, rehab the property, and how to get back to work and make it more efficient going forward so you don't have another fire of that magnitude. And so I've seen it 1,000 times. I think that's really, really interesting. When you think through these leaders, right, and these different 4 buckets, how do you make sure that each leader assesses their strengths and knows their weaknesses, right? Because everybody wants to be a superhero. Everybody only wants to, but we all have weaknesses, right? We're weak in an area that if I think, in my opinion, if you own it and you get great people around you, that it doesn't matter as long as you can own it. But so many people refuse to own it. What are your thoughts?
You're 100% right. And, we live in a world of social media where everybody says the right thing or wants to, but in terms of their actual behavior and who they are, no, not so much. And, this funny, yesterday, a friend of mine was telling me he's within a public company, thousands of employees, and they're on a Zoom call, all hands on deck. And the CEO is saying, we have to come together. We have to just gel as a team. And so because COVID is over, we all need to be back in the headquarters. And this includes a lot of workers who are on hourly wage. And so driving and longer commutes are hard. And childcare and tolls, they add up. Every single one of those thousands of employees knows the CEO lives more than 1,000 miles away from the headquarters, and he does not come in every day. He's not there. It's like, how egregiously lacking in integrity
how can you expect everybody else?
But as a leader, to think that your people do not see you are not authentic, you are not being genuine. How do you think people are going to really follow you if that is who you are? And it's not isolated. And I think it's a challenge for all of us in terms of keeping our integrity intact, because we all face situations that are challenges. And especially for people earlier in their careers, which is why we wrote the book, boy, it's hard. Because one of the traits of highly successful leaders is they tend to reject what is not for their highest and best use. We're very big on this phrase in the book, highest and best use. And it's hard early in your career. Most people, I didn't know what I was going to be or do when I was 22. But you know, this path starts to occur. And Kim, you know exactly what I'm talking about because you're highly successful. And someone looking at you and your track record says, oh, I get it. It makes perfect sense, your expertise and how you keep reinforcing it. But earlier on, it's not so obvious. I mean, if you went to dental school, all right, we know you're going to be a dentist. But in business, it's much more highly undifferentiated, which is both bad and good.
Yeah, and I think it takes a long time to figure out truly where your strengths and weaknesses are. And I actually think they change. Because as the company evolves, as your role changes, as you seek growth or seek, or try to expand into new regions, whatever it is, like you're a different leader now. So, and you might find that, wow, I could handle it before, but now with over 10 people, I can't have that same relationship I've had with everybody where we could all have lunch and we can all sit together and we can do things. Now there's no time. Now there's no opportunity. And I just think it's tough. I think people don't know what they are. Like, don't you love that interview question? Hey, what's your biggest weakness? I mean, who wants to answer that question? But I have a ton and I've learned over the years, but I would struggle if like you called me out and said, I need your 10 weaknesses. I'd really have a hard time telling you them right now because I'd have to go look them up because like you don't think about those. What I've done is it's not that I've band-aided them. I've just surrounded myself with people that can like fix, like be a better version of me in those areas. So, and that's where I love that concept of outsourced or fractional people where, somebody that could typically not afford a really good CFO that doesn't just look at your books, but can actually implement a strategy and a plan and put something together. You can now afford that as a small business because there's fractional CFOs. And so I love kind of where the world's going with, some of the contract workforce, because I think it opens up opportunities that businesses never had before. But at the same time, it gets back to that. If you're not willing to acknowledge where you really struggle, you're going to have a tough road.
Very tough. I appreciate what you're saying because I do feel somewhat vindicated now. Many years ago, I was in the online world to start and around early stage tech companies, and then started this really weird career as an interim CEO. And this is 25 years ago. And this has been around Europe for 50 years, but in the United States, oh my God, everyone looked at me like, are you crazy? What is that? And now, given the nature of the way the world is, none of us really have an expectation, gee, I'm going to work for General Motors for the next 30 years. It's not happening. And so more and more you find highly accomplished people and people rising in their careers who are welcoming the idea that in their careers, they're going to have tours of duty, as Reid Hoffman said at LinkedIn. He would greet new people and he wouldn't say, you're going to be here the rest of your career. No, he would say, we recognize that career is long and this is a tour of duty. Maybe you're here for a good long while, but maybe not. And so we're going to work to make that great for all concerned. And, one of the models that we love that we put in the book is Hollywood. Because, you're a great actor, you're a great director, you're a great cinematographer, key grip, makeup artist, whatever you are, that industry is organized around the movie or the Netflix show, whatever it is. And when that show or movie is done, you can all celebrate. Again. You're not out of work. Your expertise is even more highly valued, and you move on to the next project. Mm-hmm. So we still, there's a lot of insecurity in the business world around this, but it is coming around that this idea of more expertise, it plays, it works. And
I love your idea on Hollywood and business because that's exactly what it is. That's a contract workforce. And my
Right.
my daughter, she's been an actress, and she's only 16 now, but she hit some pretty big jobs in New York City when she was like 12 and 13, and some really good TV
In acting?
stations. And yes, and she did
Oh, that's
wonderful.
great.
But it's so funny. We went to this event in New York City, and the director of Hamilton had invited her to this thing. She was in musical theater, and we're sitting at dinner, and they're like, if you're not successful as an actress, what are you going to do? And she just looked at the table. There was about 12 of us, and she said, I'm just going to take over my mom's company. And I don't even think she knows what I do. And I loved it, but I asked her later on that evening, why did you say that? Like, I mean, you don't even know what I do. And she goes, yeah, but I know I could do what you do. And I'm like, okay. And I said, well, why do you think you wouldn't be successful as an actor? She said, Mom, you really can't count on it. It's, am I the right skin color? Am I the right height? Do I have the right voice tone? Am I in the right place at the right time? There's too many flips of the coin. And I don't think that that's how you should seek a career. And she goes, so I probably have to think of something else to do. And if I make it big in acting, that's fine. And so I love that concept. And clearly she's showing that she could probably take over the company. But
I haven't met her, and I already know she could. Let me give you one more glaring example. Okay.
Yeah, please.
So Kim, we're getting to know each other. And if you say, I got this pain in my foot, my ankle, I might say, I know a great podiatrist, and he really helped me. But I'm telling you, I am not going to say, I know this great cardiologist. No. And so we've accepted that over the past 50 to 100 years, medicine has become so wonderfully specialized, and the benefits are incredible, right? Increased longevity and health, and medical specialties. I forget the count now, if it's 150, 160, it makes perfect sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
In business, we still have this undifferentiated kind of thinking, which is if somebody is an executive somewhere and they did one thing great, well, they must do everything great. And if they get into the news and they made any money, oh my God, everything must be great. It's so wrong. And the majority of executives, if you want to know the number one trait of what is unsuccessful, it is trying to be all things to all people.
Yes, so true. I always joke,
and that is what
like
their leadership journeys show. And if you say this, because we're in the business of evaluating and really only working with these phenomenal people, but if you say to somebody gently, you're showing too much dilution, that there is no clear focus, and you need this focus. They'd be like, oh, no, I have that. Well, it's not showing. It's not showing in the results. It's not showing in happiness. So it's true. We need a more upgraded notion, which ties into your podcast, right? Because you're entirely on this theme of evolution.
Yeah.
And we're right there with you, because
I think you're saying the truth. And I think one of the things I always say to people is that I stay in my lane, and I'm really good at what I do in my lane. And I don't ever try to be more than that. And because to me, you seek an expert that's specific to your needs.
Right.
I'm not trying to do 20 things great. I'm just trying to do one. And I'm really good at it.
But it is not a limitation for you.
No.
Right? Because you're so good at it, actually that lane kind of expands in the richness and how much joy it brings you and everyone around you. And you keep getting better at it, and you keep doubling down. That is one of the primary traits in the book. We said successful leaders double down. The companion to that is they're collaborators on steroids.
Yeah.
The majority of leaders tend to be so insecure or desperate for success that they couldn't even admit they're not great at everything. The more successful people are, they're like this and this, but not that, and the rest of it. And so they have to have teams where, as one of the psychologists we interviewed for the book, he said, you have to be spiky. And spiky meant that if you were looking at a chart of all the traits you seek in a team, all of these abilities and skills, no one has them all. To be accretive on the team, you just need to be spiky in certain ways so that everybody else in the team can rely on you for your expertise, and you're going to rely on them for theirs and acknowledge it.
Yeah. Yeah. And everybody needs a different spike. If we all have the same spiky, right, it's a problem, because we're all great at the same thing. And
Yeah.
so I love the balance of people. And we've always tried to build at least my company around balance and who's really strong in different things in different areas. So I'd love to back up and talk about, you had founded the first internet coverage magazine, Online Access. And tell me, like, obviously you did that. So that was way back when internet was, new. Where do you think technology is going today, and how is that going to affect the leader of tomorrow?
Well, just to be clear, I launched 5 years before the internet had commercialized, and that
Wow.
I was 26 at the time, and that led to so much agony and failure. Luckily, it worked out in the end, but I did it by making about every mistake you can make along the way, but yet still eventually surviving.
You learned a lot, right?
Oh yeah, that's that Ben Franklin's line: experience keeps a dear school, but fools will learn in no other.
There you go.
So where's technology going? Well, there are these wild cards called AI and machine learning.
Mm-hmm.
And so now you have more and more of these discontinuous leaps that are really hard for humans to figure out in terms of predicting where is it all going to go. Mm-hmm. An analog example would be, you got a friend and 10 years ago they're a taxi driver and they just love driving a taxi, and what could possibly ever go wrong if they're in a big city, their rides, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden Uber comes along and you are so challenged, right? And so that's kind of the quintessential example, which is none of us are immune.
No.
And where you see things that have occurred that, for example, in the US, the tax code, what is it, 180,000 pages? How is one human being supposed to know that? But if you throw AI and machine learning into it, right? Well, now all of a sudden you have distributed workforces around the world, and so you have a completely different process to say, how are we going to get these tax returns done? Technology now has an answer, and it does not remove the human being from the equation. But it is interesting, and then if you follow things like, these quantum scale computers, mm-hmm. where the range of calculation is eventually going to go up so dramatically that, there are obvious first effects when it occurs. For example, there won't be a password that will be secure, because the combination of, this quantum level computing, a speed hard for humans to contemplate, along with AI, there's no code, no matter how long it is, that couldn't be cracked. So how do you think about, all right, well, the security of my bank account and my brokerage account and all of that? So no one needs to get alarmed today, but all of these things are converging forces.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I fully acknowledge they're crazy making. The U.S. Preventive Task Force just said all people under 65 should be screened for anxiety. Just think about that as a milestone for a culture.
I love it.
It's so we're all challenged to keep our sanity. And one of the executives we interviewed years ago, we've done 3 books. In the second book, one of the leaders said, I said, how did you grow a tech company from 3 to 2,000 people? And he said, well, you have to stay at the center. Like, what do you mean? He said, well, there's a center of you. And he was referring to meditation. And
he was grounded. He grounded himself.
Yeah, that you had to do something, because even in good circumstances, you could become ungrounded.
Yeah.
Right? We all know people that became incredibly successful. You read stories about stars and they blew up. Well, especially so in leadership, you come up with a great idea and boy, you've got an IPO. That's hard to handle.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. It's that instant stardom, right? Pretty quick. So, the last 2 years, companies have gone through what I would consider, survival mode. Some have thrived. Some have been incredibly successful through the pandemic. A lot of people don't talk about those companies, but How do they thrive going forward?
I think at the core, and this is my own bias, is that your strength as a team is first and foremost. If you're in an organization and you have a team, the stronger you make the team, the better off you are. So, for example, I live in Chicago. I'm born and raised, and old enough that I got to watch Michael Jordan play.
Okay,
And
you just dated yourself.
I did. I'm not even really a sports guy, but the thing that struck me about championship team is you could have blindfolded them and they probably would have played just about as well.
Wow.
And that's the thing that I always thought was a model for all of us in work, which is, man, if you could figure out a way to gel like that, you can solve any problem. And this is part of where we're trying to help with the book, because we're trying to help people have more authentic conversations with each other. If I know you, Kim, more in terms of how you best use yourself, your highest and best use, and if you know more about me, you're just going to logically tend to put me into situations where I'm going to shine, and I'm going to do the same for you. And if we could do that more and more on a team, oh my gosh, the sky's the limit.
So true.
So I think that the first thing is it's just this internal point of resilience that we all need, because, you know, a lot of projections are that the US is going to come into a recession in 2023. I don't know if it's going to happen. I'm not trying to bring it on. I think the US is always going to be strong. But the obligation for us all as either owners or people who are on teams is it's look to your own resilience first.
Yeah, absolutely. No, what a great comment. And when we think about a tech roadmap for these leaders and these companies going forward, what's your idea on tech roadmap strategy? You know, what does that look like? Should that be something companies are focused on? Because technology for every business has to be on their radar. They have to be using it. And if they're not using it, they're going to be left behind. What do you think?
Well, I don't want this to turn into an advertisement, but this is part of the beauty of the modern world is you now have these affordable fractional resources that are absolutely expert. So for example, years ago in the US, you know, this concept of a fractional CFO came about. You could be a small company, but you could get the expertise of a great CFO a day a week, a day a month, whatever. And it's a game changer, right? Well, now the same thing applies in technology, which is that you have this category of chief technology officers, chief information officers. That's one easy answer, which is you don't have to solve all these problems yourself if you're the one running the company. And even if you are the CIO or the CTO at your company and there's some project which is just, I don't have enough time, I don't have the bandwidth, I don't have the people on the team. Well, the beauty of the modern world is resources can be brought to bear.
Yeah,
in a variety of forms. I think it's the easiest answer for people to think of as opposed to what tends to happen when we're under stress, which is, oh my God, what am I going to do? It's a little more of breathe and say, wait a minute, what's the team going to do? Do we have these resources here? How do we come together better as a team? And who can we call? What is the online resource that we can go to that can help us out here? Because guaranteed there are resources for everything now.
Wow, I love it. Thank you so much, Bob. And our goal with Evolve is to really enable leaders to learn, connect, and grow together. And you have shared so many insights today. Thank you so much for being here and sharing all of your wonderful ideas and thoughts with everybody.
Thank you, Kim. I'm honored to be with you.
All right. Thank you, Bob.